My name is Karen Gottlieb. I'm a Trinity 89 alum. I majored in public policy with a focus in journalism and media. Through Duke, I interned at the Larry King Live Show and ultimately decided to go to law school, always with the goal of sort of staying in entertainment and media, and have been a transactional entertainment and media lawyer ever since I graduated law school. But the whole time staying in New York. So so what that means is basically I help clients strategize and negotiate deals, both talent side and company side, across all facets of entertainment and media industry, whether it's writers, directors, on-camera performers, athletes, journalists, celebrity doctors, major companies, major music stars. It just runs the gamut. And we can get into that in more detail later.
I envy Karen's incredibly succinct and bio. I have had an incredibly meandering path. So the good news is I can answer almost any question you have about the industry because I've done a little bit of everything. And maybe, help you guys chart your own path. So I was Trinity 96. I was also a public policy major. I also went to law school, and then I practiced in New York fairly briefly, and then and one day I walked into the managing partner's office of my firm, and I sort of confessed to him this lifelong desire to work in film and television. And he did me one of the great favors that anyone's ever done me. He said, listen, go try it for a year. If you don't like it or it's not a good fit, come back and your job will be waiting for you, which was such a fantastic kind of safety net to move across country where I knew one person in Los Angeles, sleep on a couch for 3 weeks while I looked for a rental apartment, submitted resumes to all of the agencies trying to get into the mailroom programs. Anyway, so it gave me the freedom to do that. I then started on a path where I worked worked at an agency as an assistant, which is kind of, for many paths out here, the sort of beginning apprenticeship. And that began a 16-year career as a studio executive, where I worked at Universal, then 20th Century Fox, and then Warner Brothers as a film exec. And then I kind of feel like the arc of my professional career has been toward me trying to sort of work my way closer and closer to the heart of the creative process, to the point where at Warner Brothers, after having been an exec for so many years, I started writing in my off time, and worked for a couple of years on writing until I felt like I had something that was pretty good. And I left my job, sold it, and that sort of started my writing career, which has been about 5 years now. And this March, my first produced credit as a writer is coming out. And it's kind of the sort of next stage of this 20-year journey. So that was an incredibly long bio, but I tried to give you the sort of general sketch. Amy, shall we want to jump into?
Oh, sorry. I was hoping Bree, go for it, Bree.
Oh, thank you. Karen, I have a question for you regarding, and maybe Drew, you might have some thoughts about this in practice too. So I am writing in kind of the middle stages of a project. And so I was wondering what we should be doing in these early stages of a project to protect our creative intellectual property and future interests. If you could, maybe shed some light onto that.
Sure. And I'm sure Drew will also have thoughts, having been on multiple sides of this. It's funny because I kind of had the reverse situation where I started out wanting to be a writer and slowly like realized that I wanted a different lifestyle and ended up practicing law. But
You probably headed in the right direction, as most writers will tell you.
well, we do say with what we do, it's like 80% business and 20% practicing law. So, but it's a good question that you ask, Bree, because there's this fuzzy area of how much you can protect something and how and what isn't protectable. And that's by design. Like the Copyright Act was designed that way because the whole point of the Copyright Act was to incentivize people to create by allowing a limited monopoly, but not a perpetual necessarily monopoly. That's why copyright expires. Certain things enter the public domain and anybody can use them. There are criteria for what is protectable under copyright laws. So ideas are not copyrightable. There has to be something sufficiently original about the expression of the idea for it to be protectable at copyright. But even then, I mean, that's like a highly technical answer. A practical answer is, you can put a C in the circle on the bottom of every page of what you're writing, and that is enough. If you give it to somebody to establish like your copyright ownership, you don't have to file it with the Copyright Office. You can also, depending on what it is, you can register it with the Writers Guild, which is also just another way of establishing that you were the original author of it. But the fact of the matter is that in order to get anybody to look at your work, it's going to take a certain element of risk, which is trusting somebody to take it and that they're not going to rip you off. Because are you really going to sue them for copyright infringement? Or, that's expensive, it's time consuming. And at the end of the day, you might not win depending on how fully fleshed out your work was, your concept was, how original it was versus generic, So on a practical level, put the little copyright notice on your work. When you send it out to people, and this is another kind of thing in the entertainment industry, oftentimes agents or certainly studios or networks won't just accept things cold out of the blue because they're inundated with things all the time and they need somebody to kind of sift through it. You'll get like an automated reply that they don't accept unsolicited submissions. But if you can make a personal contact with someone at an agency or someone at a network who's willing to take a look at it, oftentimes what you can do is send it with like a cover email, even just trying to, as casually and friendly as you can, say, I'm sharing this with you in the expectation that, if you want to use it, we'll work out terms, just so that it's something establishing that it's not a gift. Or and then some states are more favorable about this than others. I think in California, there's more of a equitable concept of if somebody has brought in an idea and contributed some effort to developing it. I mean, I think there was one crazy case in California that made everybody nervous. And Drew, you might know about this, but it was an unscripted reality TV concept. It was like a follow doc series of a celebrity, and two producers met with the network and didn't even have the celebrity locked up, attached in any way, and pitched the idea. And the network was like, "That's great. What is what's the level of like the celebrity? What do they require? What are they willing to do, etc." And they're like, "Oh, we don't have a deal with the celebrity." And so the network was like, "Oh, forget it then." And they didn't do a deal with the producers, but then eventually created the show. And the producers, I think, sued and won under an equitable theory of that, they had brought it to the network and the network had unjustly enriched themselves through their work product, even though they had no deal with the celebrity and it was a show about the celebrity, nothing really that the producers did, which made everybody very nervous. And also, I think the way those particular cases get decided, they weren't necessarily publicly reported, so it was hard to see what the rationale was. It's not the same in New York, but it is equally challenging to get an unsolicited submission considered, and to simultaneously like do that dance of protecting your rights without seeming difficult, so that somebody would look at it.
The one thing I would add to that is, Karen, I don't, you might want to cover your ears when I say this as a lawyer. I do think, I think the thing Karen said first of just embracing the risk of it a little bit is that really resonated with me. As a studio exec, whenever I received an email with someone that had any hint of legalese in it, like I just would immediately disregard. So I think it's really, nothing screams amateur more than something that feels like a formal or a kind of legalistic email, to be blunt. I mean, I think for me, I've been writing off and on for a long time. At the very beginning, to give myself peace of mind, I would just register it with the guild, right? I would just, I think it's, I forget what it is now. It was like $15 then, but I would like just register a draft just so I had something on record somewhere. But especially now in the days of email, just emailing something to someone is, you know, there's even that is a record, where before you would sometimes hand someone a hard copy. So I just would, I think what Karen said is so smart about balance. You have to balance your fears about that with not wanting to scream amateur or someone who's overly kind of legalistic about these things. For me, in being in the business for 20 years, I've never heard of anyone's screenplay being stolen. I have heard people go in and say, I pitched this idea, or I had a meeting. Like pitches, I think, are much trickier. But to be blunt, you'll worry about pitches after you guys have been out here, you know, for a couple of years. We can talk about that. Like, it's hard to even get in the door to pitch, and that it gets a lot more gray. And people say, "Oh, I pitched them that, and I think they took it." But I would say that the chances, in my experience, have been extremely slim.
Yeah, I'm smiling because it is very true what Drew is saying, but I have had clients who, in the case of one very, very popular reality show, subsequently got hit with a lawsuit of people who came out of the woodwork saying, this was our idea and we put this all together and you iced us out. And it, you know, they fought it for a long time and ultimately reached a settlement, but it, you know, that is a risk. And then I also have had projects where it's a film based on somebody's life story and you have a life story deal with that person, but the reason the producers became aware of the life story was because of an article in the newspaper. And where studios have been skittish if you don't also have the article in the newspaper locked up. So it is like this little dance of, you know, I don't think networks or producers are out to steal things. That's obviously not like the primary goal, but it's just such a gray area. It is a gray area, and you do have to accept a lot of risk, and a lot of times the risk is not necessarily in your favor until you have some clout.
And I would add to that also, this kind of also begs a larger question about, my advice would be obviously doing excellent work, and we can get to this if we, you know, when we talk about writing and things of that sort, but doing excellent work and finding a representative so that you're not kind of cold calling or cold emailing people on your own. That I think that is part of the protection, is having a representative be the one that's sometimes in, you know, doing some of the stuff on your behalf.
Yeah, I would say the biggest part of the battle is getting a representative that has, you know, that credibility that people can rely on. You know, it will be received differently if it's coming through an agency, a management firm, even a law firm, not a litigator, but like a transactional firm like us, where, you know, they know who they're dealing with and they know that they're not just going to be sending them random stuff.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellen. This is a question for both of you. I'm a 2L at Duke right now and hoping to do some sort of like media law. So I'm curious, either in law school or outside of law school, like what experience have you had that's been the most beneficial to help you be successful in this pretty competitive industry?
Being successful as a lawyer.
Yeah, like breaking into the entertainment field and stuff too.
Yeah, I would say really, honestly, I would get any experience you possibly can. I think personally, having only ever done it in New York, it seems like it's much easier in LA, just because that's sort of like, not that it's a one industry town, but that is really the industry, there. And in New York, it's kind of more, it's an industry, but it's not the only industry or even the industry in New York. So it's just a bit harder. But it's really, I was very fortunate. I mean, I felt like taking advantage of any opportunities that Duke has, connections that Duke has, use the alumni network, reach out to people. Word of mouth is great. I tried so many different hats on my path to deciding to go to law school, because I just kind of knew I started out wanting to be a creative writer. Then I thought I would go into journalism. So I worked on this interview show at CNN in DC. And then I just decided I wanted to use those skills to go to law school in this field. I worked one summer at ABC Network in their law department. I just did any job I could. And then when I graduated law school, I looked for firms that had some relevant practice area, whether it was IP or entertainment. They're there, but it's hard. It's definitely fewer in New York than in LA.
Thank you.
Sure. Drew, you probably have some insight there since you've worn so many different hats.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. I mean, I was a corporate transactional lawyer in New York, and never made my way to the sort of entertainment law side, but everything Karen said sounds spot on.
Hi, my name's Sanan. My question's for Drew, and that's, as a writer, how do you prevent yourself from getting caught up in your own bubble? Meaning like not being able or being less able to view your story from an objective lens because you know it so well compared to like a fresh audience.
Boy, that's a great question. I think that I don't know if it's possible, to be frank. I think that that's something that my longtime partner is also a writer, and she's been doing that far longer than I, and she's extremely successful and has had multiple movies produced, and like to this day, she, I can just speak for the two of us, like the life of a writer is just riddled with self-doubt and neuroses and anxiety and trying to step away to look at the work clearly and not being able to do that. And, I don't know if any, especially if you try to do work that is personal, right, in some way, then therefore, like by definition, it's hard to be objective. I will say this in terms of the bubble aspect on the project that I'm doing right now. It's a mini series, and we had a writer's room, and so bringing together a group of very diverse viewpoints and in interviewing these writers, seeing what perspectives they were bringing to bear and trying to put together a group of people that would continually challenge you. That was one way, but that's very specific to TV. That's, as a writer in film, it is just like, it is utter solitude for the vast majority of the process. So I wish I had a better answer than that, but I think, I don't know if it's possible to retain objectivity.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lily. This question's for both of you because of the career switches you've had or during school. I'm wondering if you could talk about the times when what you thought you wanted to do changed and like when you were doubting or switching paths, how you made those decisions and knew what was going to be right for you.
Karen, do you want to jump in? Would you like me to?
I mean, I think it's sort of sad in a way. Like, my whole life, like since I was like a young child, I loved creative writing. I thought I would be an author. I would always be writing stories, and I wrote for my school paper, and I thought I would make a life as a writer. And then as I got older, I just realized how hard it is to be successful as a writer. And did I want to have the life where you could see so many excellent, smart people not realizing the success they deserve, because it's sometimes the system works and sometimes it doesn't. And I just wanted to, if I was going to work that hard, I wanted to have a little more of a path. I guess I also sort of wondered if I could come up with so many original stories that would be worthwhile. That's why I kind of veered into journalism and exploring journalism more, because I felt like, well, real life stories, there's a never ending supply of interesting real life stories. But then I also realized journalism is equally competitive and not so guaranteed that for all your hard work that you could necessarily be successful. Plus you have to be willing to basically go wherever the job is or the assignment is. And I was originally from New York, and I love my time in Durham, and I kick myself all the time why I'm not living in Durham now. But at the time, I desperately wanted to come back to New York. So I thought, gee, I really want to be able to direct my own future more. And how can I use these skills that I like with writing and thinking and being analytical and researching, like for creative writing and journalism, in a way that can give me kind of a more secure path to success and maybe a little financial reward that I have a bit more control over. There's a bit more of a ladder to follow. And I thought law school. So I did that. And then I just really made it my business to take all the relevant classes that I could and get, like I said, take any available job, whatever it was, and really just make it known, that that's what I wanted to do. And had I realized at the time what a resource the Duke network is, I probably would have worked that more than I did. But the benefit that you guys have is that the Duke network is only that much bigger now. And everybody, for the most part, is they just love Duke so much. They're just so happy to help fellow Duke alum. So I can't stress enough how much you should tap into that.
I completely agree. When I was graduating, there were almost zero resources, and like there was no network. Like I think I went through this incredibly clunky database to try to find a couple of people from Duke that worked in the entertainment industry, and it was like trying to find a needle in a haystack, and would get in touch with them just through their email in the database. And anyway, and I think there's so many more resources now. In terms of how did you know, like in terms of just figuring out what you want to do or changing paths, I will give you just, for me, it was very scary. It really was every time. And I guess the one thing I will say to you guys that I wish someone had said to me is like, I felt like graduating from Duke, which is this really good school, I felt like by senior year, I should have everything figured out and that I should know exactly what my plan is. And so many of my classmates looked like they had everything mapped out and like everyone was on a track. And I was like, what's my track? And so the answer is, it was terrifying. And there was tons of self-doubt and every change was scary. And I never knew what the right answer was. And but I think I've led a pretty wonderful life, and I've had an exciting career, and I guess I would just say that and I've got friends out here that knew what they were doing and what they wanted to do from the minute they graduated college, who are not very successful, and I've got friends out here that were a mess and are phenomenally successful. So I guess don't sweat it. Like, might be trial and error. it might be, it's going to be trial and error. That's my personal opinion.
I'll add two more things to that. One was at our Thanksgiving dinner, we had two college students, and they were asking each other, oh, do you know what, they're both first years, and they were like, oh, do you know what you're going to major in yet? And then every adult around the table went around saying, oh my gosh, when I first started, I was majoring in this, and then I totally switched by the time I got to junior or senior year, or ended up doing something totally different. Everybody had a story that they just went in one way, and by the time they graduated, they were on a different path, or after they graduated, they ended up doing something totally different. So I totally echo the don't feel pressured to know 100%, but I, definitely be thinking about it and be trying to figure it out. And, half the time it's only through experience. And the other thing is, Amy, if she were physically with me, would be kicking me under the table, because I keep saying reach out to the Duke Network, but really specifically the Duke Entertainment Media and the Arts Network, of which I'm the chair in New York, but there's also an LA Demon, there's a DC Demon. I think there's like a Chicago Demon, but any place where there is a Duke alum and anybody working in entertainment and media, there's a Demon group. And Amy is also just an invaluable resource because she knows absolutely everybody, Duke and Demon. So definitely utilize that resource.
Oh, and to add one final thing, just because Karen mentioned majors, I personally feel like I was a public policy major. Weirdly, the rigor with which, I don't know if you guys still do memos, policy memos, but like the rigor with which we learned to kind of write concise memos is probably the biggest help to my career now as a writer. And you would have thought like, oh, you should have been an English major or a literature major. And I don't think you can ever predict how your major is going to help you or what the right major is. I would just say study what's most interesting to you, and that's really all that matters.
Hi, my name is Devin. Thank you all so much for coming to speak with us. This question is for both of you. I wanted to know your day-to-day highlights and what motivates you to do the job that you're doing. And then for Drew specifically, the day-to-day highlights for being an exec and then for being a writer.
Sure, I think you should go first.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Well, as a writer, especially writing right now for writing in TV, so I'm what's called a showrunner, which is, that's in television, that's kind of what a director is in film is what a showrunner is in TV. And it's a pretty great combination of, for several months, all I did with my writing partner was write the pilot of this show. And so our days was just either, this was all during the pandemic, our days were just, it was on Zoom, pitching ideas, talking about the story, then entire days where we were both writing alone. But then as it progressed through different stages, then we submitted it to Apple as the streamer that's making the show, and then Apple greenlit it. So then it became finding our stars, and then we would spend the day courting our stars and talking to them and talking about the story. And then after we had our cast and our directors, then I spent 4 months this past summer in New York City on set every day overseeing the shoot. Then for the past 3 months, we've been editing. So we're working on editing the show and working with the composer to come up with the score and reviewing visual effects. So to me, the fun of television as a writer is you get to do everything. You get to write and be involved on set and be involved in post-production. So I really enjoy that. And there's also as the showrunner, you're also an executive producer. So, you're involved with the budget and the deal making. So it kind of brings into bear all these different aspects and all the different parts of my background. As an executive, man, what can I say positively about a day in the life of an executive? It can be very exciting. And you really can feel as an agent or a lawyer or as an executive, like you're in the center of the action, right? So if you love the kind of deal making and the kind of business part of showbiz, it can be very thrilling and exciting. It was also, it was a tremendous amount of pressure because my primary role was like making sure creatively we were okay with it and overseeing the budget and all those things. So it was often very confrontational. So it's, you have to be okay, with some of those aspects of, like there are aspects of me that's more introverted, and it's a very tough job, if you're like that. But anyway, a day in the life of an exec would be get in. Usually there's a staff meeting where you've all read scripts and you talk about the scripts you liked or didn't like, what things have come in that you think the studio should make or shouldn't make, what drafts of projects that come in that you think are improving or moving backwards. Then you might be on conference calls with a director about the look of a film, or you might be in a meeting with a writer giving them notes on the script. So you really do touch so many aspects of the process. But it's more of a managerial role as opposed to a creative role. And some people absolutely adore that. And, I made the move because I really enjoy the more purely creative.
So it sounds like an oxymoron to say what is the most exciting part about being a lawyer. But I do think this is the most fun way to be a lawyer because, as I said, it's heavily business oriented. And what I love about my job is you definitely see your hand in shaping the deal. We're not strictly talent side or company side. We have clients that are both, and that, never on the same side or on both sides of a deal of the same deal, but you can be on representing one or the other in any given situation. So it also helps with negotiating because you have an insight into what the other side needs and wants, what their pain points are. On top of which we do so many different, basically any type of area. We're not strictly film and TV. We also do book and magazine publishing. We do branding and licensing. We have a theater practice. We do, all different areas, like I mentioned, athletes and endorsement agreements. And a lot of our talent clients are also like mini companies unto themselves because they're such icons. It's not just deals for their services. It's, they develop and finance their own projects and produce them. So, so it keeps it fun. Every day is something different, and even really no day is what you think it's going to be when you start out in the morning saying, oh, this is what I'm working on today. 1,000 different things will come up, and you'll be working on any number of different types of deals simultaneously. So multitasking is important. I would say the one downside to that is that there's just never enough time in the day, and it makes time go by really fast. I've been at my current firm for 25 years, and I was at another firm before that for a little over 3 years. But it all just flies by because you're just constantly busy, but it's fun.
Hi, I'm Emily. Thank you for joining us today. My question, you talked a little bit about having some representation. My question is for since so many of us are very early in our careers, if we're in the process of kind of pitching an idea, when would be the right time to start looking for an agent? And then on top of that, what is do you have any tips for kind of fostering the best relationship with an agent?
Let's see. So I guess, and this is as a writer, or in what kind of capacity would you say?
As a writer, if you're pitching, if you're sending ideas out.
So I guess, and Karen, please feel free to disagree. My advice after many years as a studio executive who was on the other side of all of those hopeful pitches, don't send out ideas. It's just, that's not the way to go about it. The only thing you should be thinking about is writing the absolute best writing sample you can. It is all that matters. That can be a feature script, or it can be a television spec pilot. And if you have that, then we can have a different conversation. But that's, in my experience, everything that's ever happened to anyone I know or anyone I saw as a studio exec, everything started with a really strong piece of written material. And that opens up every door. Off of that, you can go and pitch ideas, or you can be hired for jobs, or a studio might have an idea and come to you. But without anything to point to, I mean, there's a billion good ideas, and every producer in Hollywood has their own ideas. They want to see who can execute ideas. And that's where the writing sample is. I will even go as far as to say this. I was speaking to a Duke alum actually just yesterday, and this is her first year out here, and she was asking me like, okay, well, my roommate is an assistant at an agency, and like she's always going out and networking, and like how much should I feel like I should be doing that, and how much does it matter if I like schmooze or know the right people? And I would say none of that matters. Like, you already know the right people through myself or Karen or Julien Thuan or other agent, and representative alum of Duke. Like, you will have plenty of ways to get your material into the right hands. And what I said to this person was, just spend all of the energy and time you're worrying about networking, put it into your craft. If the writing is excellent, nothing else will matter. And if the writing is not very good, no connections are going to make any difference. So anyway, that's in terms of pitching ideas. Like, as a writer, I would not think about pitching ideas. I would just focus on that feature script or television spec that you hone and hone and hone until it's the best thing you think you're capable of writing.
Yeah, I would also just add, you guys are so fortunate because you are living in an age where access is so much easier than it's ever been before. I mean, not to say that it's easy, because it is competitive, and there's a lot of people who, aspire to these careers, and it's hard to kind of siphon through what's real. But it is easy to email somebody you have something in common with, like Duke or Demon, and make a connection that way to get mentorship. I'm pretty sure there is a function on student affairs or alumni affairs where you can search alumni by what they do for a living or where they work. And I just think mentorship is also very helpful because those people can not only help guide you with advice, but help introduce you to other people. And it is still at its core, it's a cliche, but the entertainment industry is very much a relationship business, and you do often deal with the same people over and over. And, unless you're blessed to have a best friend who blows up to be, some superstar, things don't generally just fall in your lap, although we have done any number of deals for friends of, superstars. And in fact, some of our clients have promoted just even very random people in their lives to positions of importance in their ultimate production companies or whatever, but that's not really readily available to most people. Still, the relationships that you make, and it's not just, to Drew's point, it's not just going out and randomly schmoozing and meeting people for 2 seconds. It's trying to find something in common, people that will serve as mentors with you and help guide you, and, you know, either reviewing your writing, giving you advice, or introducing you to other people. The position that I'm in, unfortunately, you know, we are expensive, and we usually don't get clients coming in who don't already have representation. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg.
Hi, my name is Ivy. You spoke about your experience earlier about Duke and how it prepared you for the path and journey that you are now. I wanted to get to, like, if we can like loop back there and talk more about your time at Duke and how it basically led to now, more specifically from you, Drew, about screenwriting.
There's like almost no correlation, you know, in terms of just, and I say that as kind of, you know, it shaped me as a person, right? And like I said, public policy as a major benefited me in ways that I never realized at the time in terms of my writing. But I just think that that the good news was there was nothing I did at Duke that necessarily led me here, which also means there's nothing you can really do wrong there. I mean, obviously, hopefully you're all way smarter than I am and can figure it out faster than me. And I wish that for all of you, but I just think a little bit like Karen was saying earlier, study what you're interested in, do what you're interested in. I'm going to sound like such an old person now, but like it's such a magical time in your life that if I could snap my fingers and just go back and just learn and have no other real responsibilities for a couple of years other than, you know, and you've got a part-time job, but it's like, it's such a incredible and rare thing that like, I just think like whether, especially if you're talking about writing, like just fill yourself up with as much experience and as much of a breadth of learning and as you possibly can, because you will draw on all of it, you know, later. So I would just say like experience and following your passion and learning is more important than like, oh, take this creative writing class at Duke. I don't even know if there are creative writing classes at Duke. I never took one for sure. So, and again, I reference my partner just so it's a larger sample size of just not of one person. She went to Rutgers. I say that because this is a group of Duke people, and I think we can all agree Rutgers is not as fancy of a school as Duke, you know, but she got a great education and then went and temped in New York doing nothing entertainment related and is one of the top screenwriters in Hollywood. And, you know, she didn't take any creative writing classes. She just, you know, honed her voice. That's, I guess, I've stumbled onto a point, which is like, if you hone your voice, I think that's the most valuable thing you have as a writer. And there's all different things can lead you to do that. It's not just a creative writing class or coursework or anything like that.
Thank you.
Hi, Drew and Karen. Thanks so much for being here. Drew, can you talk a little bit more about your shift from the executive side to the creative side? Because I'm super interested to know whether it was smooth because like you had a lot of these people who you could email and contact, or was it more difficult because they potentially pigeonholed you as an executive and didn't take you as seriously as a creative?
I think a little bit of both, actually, right? I think that and this is to Karen's earlier point, like, I believe personally right? Like I keep harping on hone your voice, focus on your craft, but there comes the point at which you need someone to help to open that door, or then, you know, help you take the next step. To me, that's a representative. That's the crucial person that kind of is your kind of ambassador in the world. And the fantastic benefit I had was Julien Thuan, who hopefully will be joining us soon. But we both went to Duke. He became an assistant at an agency, and we were friends our entire time out here. And that poor guy has read scripts of mine for years. And it finally got to a point where I sent him something and he said, "This is it. Like, I'm going to take this out." And I was like, no, actually don't. I forget it. And he insisted on it, and it launched a writing career for me. But to your the second aspect of that, which is like, oh, did I feel, I had judged so many people for so long that it was kind of crippling, because I was so terrified to be judged myself. And it's a super competitive industry. All of the other execs, we're all competitive with each other. We're all tracking each other's careers. And no other executive wanted me to succeed as a writer. So, there was a little bit of that, to be honest, but, ultimately it's totally fine. And having Julien was like way overcame all of that kind of stuff, having a sort of passionate advocate.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, my question's for Karen. I'm Ava, and I am doing like a independent study in like term paper right now about fair use and copyright. And I've never been interested in like anything legal before, but I've really found myself super interested in it. And for the first time, it's kind of considering going to law school. And I'm a senior, so it wouldn't be automatically, but I was just wondering, you mentioned like being into creative writing and then making the decision to go to law school and be a lawyer. Do you ever miss that creative side of things, or like miss like being like making things? Or do you feel like you're satisfied with that creativity that you might get from your job now? I don't know if that makes sense. But.
No, it makes perfect sense. So I think this is why I kind of said earlier that it's a little bit sad how I started, because I was such a creative person. And I had received like recognition for my writing. And I honestly think that side of my brain has just atrophied away. Like, I don't even know if I could still do it. Maybe to Drew's point of you have to constantly hone it. And also just literally, I have no time. I spend so much of my day reviewing documents and with words in a different way. It's very hard to turn off. So I think I really think I would just have to like throw this whole career over and focus on that if I ever wanted to return to it. But I do appreciate it. I love to read when I can, which is also hard. I have to find things that fit within the time frame that I have to commit to them. And, I'm an avid film goer, theater goer, I partake of all of that. But I just really think it is a part of my life that I do wish I still had, and maybe one day I will have again, but at the moment, no time.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, I'm going to interrupt real quick to welcome Julien.
By the way, I just want to apologize to everyone. Sorry, I got stuck in something and it's a sandwich day with last minute stuff, but I will offer to anybody, some of you I've met before, but anybody that I have not, reach out to me directly. I'm happy to set a one-on-one and we can have a meeting where I'm happy to give you as much time as you like, and really sorry for this.
Well, that's very, very kind of generous, and no worries. Drew told us all about the exciting life of an agent. And that's what you were doing. So we understand and respect that, and we appreciate the time that you'll share with us. And actually, Drew, do you want to introduce Julien? Because I think that could be kind of fun. And then we'll jump into the questions.
Sure. This is Julien Thuan. He is, and I'm actually happy to introduce him because he won't say this himself. He is an incredibly big deal in the industry. He is a super successful partner at United Talent Agency, and on the literary side. So he represents writers and directors, and he's also incredibly active with the Duke alumni community in Demon, and also an incredibly good person. So that's my little pitch.
I mean, that and more. Julien, how'd he do?
And he's way too kind, but Drew's also a good friend, I'll just say. So it's yeah, you can take it as you want to. But thank you.
And also Karen Gottlieb is here from Demon, New York. Julien, I don't know if you all have met before, but
Nice to meet you.
Cool.
Nice to meet you too.
Well, great. Well, if it's okay, let's just keep cooking with the questions, because I know, Julien, a couple are specific for you. And Kira, you want to take us from here?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. My name is Kira, and I'm more on the creative side. I guess I'm aspiring to be like a DP or a cinematographer, but I'm in this visual culture class that kind of discusses copyright, and I kind of have a question related to that. Especially since there's like a lot of postmodern art is now pretty like pastiche, and copyright laws, I guess, become more and more blurred over time. I'm kind of wondering if there's like more of a need for entertainment lawyers because of copyright lawsuits, and if yes, like how do you think one becomes a successful entertainment lawyer in that way, whether you've dealt with that in your own experience or if you've heard of something from someone else.
So I think it's a couple of questions you have in there. So I think one is more about kind of fine art, if you're talking about modern art. And although certainly those kind of concepts of fair use come up in things like music and film and writing all the time. I do think it has become more challenging. Fair use so first of all, I think people have a lot of misconceptions about fair use. Fair use doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. Fair use is a defense to copyright infringement. It basically means you've infringed somebody's copyright, but you have a defense that exculpates you. So like legally, it's never something people want to rely on. You always want to make sure if you're actually commercially exploiting something that's heavily relying on fair use and you're trying to generate revenue from it, you want to make sure that either you have insurance or you have a fair use lawyer review it and kind of bless it, because it's very gray. Even under the Copyright Act, it's gray, and the way the Supreme Court decisions have come down over time, they've just added layers to it that make it even more gray. So if you want to be a litigator, I think it could be an interesting area to explore, because it is kind of one of those areas where you can come up with an argument and you kind of, maybe you'll win it, maybe you won't, because every case is so fact specific to those circumstances. I'm not a litigator, so I don't know. You know, we don't love it when our clients rely on fair use, and yet many of them do all the time. And in fact, I have one now who has a film running on Paramount Plus that is heavily relying on fair use, and so far so good. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope so.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Mason. Thank you all so much for talking to us today. My question is definitely mostly directed towards Julien. We've talked today a lot about sort of how we can stand out sort of in the industry, and the best advice definitely has been, you know, focus on the writing. and focus on your product. But once we have that product, we have that finished thing that we're super proud of, we're happy with, what can artists and creatives do who are looking for representation do to stand out in the industry and make sure ours is the piece that gets written or gets read?
So you probably will not believe me, but I sincerely believe this and have seen it again and again and again. All that matters is the material. And if the material is good, you're just looking for access points. And those access points can be assistants, they can be executives, they can be managers, they can be agents, they can be literally anybody. And the good news is, I mean, this is one of the great benefits, I think, of having the Demon Network, is that you know that you have a bunch of people, at least most of whom are trustworthy, if not all, and you can give it to people and get feedback and bounce, you know, whatever responses you get off of Amy or whomever. And I think the biggest, if people respond to if one person really loves your material, that means without a doubt, many people will respond to it. So at that point, you just have to have the confidence to find the right partners and not say yes to everybody who likes what you have. And I think that the biggest pitfall is not someone writing something great and getting stuck and not finding anyone to read it. The biggest pitfall is someone writing something great and getting in a bad relationship early. And that it's very, very hard to unravel a bad relationship. And it's very hard to, make a second impression, right? When you've put something out through the wrong person. And, there are many, many stories of people that I work with where you'll spend 15 years with people who've become incredibly successful who still can't dislodge a bad choice that they made at the beginning of their career, and that's, and I was dealing with that yesterday with a producer who was attached to something and made a predatory deal with a writer, and we still can't figure it out. The guild can't figure it out. The lawyer can't figure it out. We can't figure it out. Threatening the person won't get it done, like nothing. And so, again, my best advice is be open to scrutiny, be open to negative feedback, be open to the discomfort of being told that your material's not ready. And then when you feel like it's ready in your heart and you feel like people are giving you the responses that you are trying to get to, then be willing to put it out there and be patient.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, my name is Greta. Thank you so much for talking with us. I have a question for Julien. I was wondering if you have any advice on how you know if a rep or an agent is a good representative for your work, or if you're a good fit for a specific agent.
I mean, it's very hard. When you have no context, it's very hard. Everyone seems great when they're telling you how great you are, and everyone seems great when they work at a company that seems like a real company, or they've worked with somebody who, that you admire. Again, I think it's patience, right? I think it's have the confidence to say, I'm not sure, let's meet again, or I'm not sure, let's talk again, or I'm not, and have the confidence to ask the questions. It is, if you find the right representative, it can be like a real partnership. It's my romantic notion of what the agent client relationship is it's a true partnership where you're both working really hard to find opportunities for the artist, and you're both protective of the artist's rights, and anybody that you let into that zone is part of your sacred pact, right? You get a sense very quickly with people by the questions they're asking, and listen to what they're saying. If they're saying, hey, this is pretty good, but what have you got that's sellable? Or I could sell this, or let me take this out and let you know. And if we sell it, then you can be my client, right? Or things like that. I think that you want somebody who's just super, super passionate about your material. It's your career, it's your life, it's your sweat equity, it's all of that stuff. So you just want to be incredibly discerning about the people that you associate yourself with. If you're creeped out by talking to the person who's going to represent you, I assure you everyone else is creeped out by talking to them as well.
I think I'm going to weigh in with some very cynical advice. Julian, like that was like a beautiful, very high-minded description of the artist-agent relationship. I will say, just from my many years as an executive, it is a intensely competitive and very hierarchical business. And if you, let's say you're a writer, you want to work at one of the major studios or one of the big streaming platforms, and it is a breathtakingly small business, right? I mean, let's say there's 10 main executives at each place, and there's 8 studios and 5 major, I mean, it's almost the size of a large high school, right? And you're, as an executive, either in film or television, your time is so, you barely have time to breathe. And there's a hierarchy to like whose calls you return. So to give you guys the very honest kind of advice, there are major agencies, and I think you want to try to get representation from one of the major agencies, and ideally from the best, the sort of, to be kind of blunt, like there's a consensus about who the most desirable agents are at the major agencies. And the closer you can get to that, the greater your access, the quicker your agent's calls are returned, the better your shot at jobs. So it's intensely competitive. The good news is, through this network and through all of the Duke alum that are currently agents or assistants to agents or assistants to producers, anyone who's been out here for a year could give you the rundown of, okay, here's where you want to be. Here are the good people at this agency. So it's really, again, not to be a broken record, the better the material, the better the representative you will get. And there is a qualitative difference between them. Yes, that interpersonal relationship is very important, but it is also a business partnership, and you want your business partner to be as effective as possible. And there's a big difference, to be blunt.
And Drew, I'm sorry. I just sent something in the chat. Again, I'm really sorry. Today was just a mess for me, but I have sent my email address to all of you. Again, Drew, Karen, Amy, I'm really sorry as well, but please sincerely reach out to me. Happy to schedule one-on-ones with anybody. And yeah, Amy is we've done many of these and it's never been like this. So I'm truly sorry.
Hey, it's no worries. We appreciate it. We understand completely. And that's very kind for you to share your email. I'll send it in an email to the students so you have it. No worries. Good luck with all the deal making. We know it's happening.
If only it were that. Bye.
Sorry. Take care. Be well.
Again, this is Devin. And
hey, sorry to interrupt, but is it okay if we have 2 more questions, Karen and Drew and cohort? Just 2 more. Is that okay? I know, Karen, you're on the.
Sure, yeah. Just keep going.
I'm going to send you an edible arrangement. Don't worry.
Yeah, my question's super quick and directed to Drew. I was really just interested in your project and maybe your writing group. And you were mentioning your partner and how your writing partner, you work with them often. And I just was very curious about how that process goes.
Well, I'll make this suggestion in case the other question is for Karen. I'm happy to stay on a little bit longer if we want to ask Karen a question first, and then I can speak to that.
Or if they're both for you, let me know now.
Okay, well, does anyone else have a question for Karen? Because I think our question was for Julien. Anyone else, or should we let Karen? You have given us a law school in an hour and more, so I think we'll let you go. Thank you very much, everybody. Round of applause for Karen.
Nice meeting you, Karen.
Nice to meet you all. Nice to meet you, Drew, and good luck, everybody. And I want to echo what Julien said. If anybody wants to reach out to me one-on-one, you can find me on LinkedIn or through Amy, and happy to help however I can.
Also, thanks for being the chair of Demon New York. And she's listed as a helpful human New York if you guys go to dukedemon.com. So another way to find Karen. You are indeed a helpful human. Thank you so much.
Hi, guys. My pleasure.
Be well.
Okay, let's talk about me. Kidding. So the project I'm working on now is have you guys heard of WeWork, the shared workspace company? So we did a 8-episode miniseries about the rise and fall of WeWork, and Jared Leto plays Adam Newman, and Anne Hathaway plays Rebecca Newman, his wife. And it's sort of in the vein of The Big Short or The Social Network or Wolf of Wall Street, where it's kind of one of those like delicious rise and fall stories. But in this case, we actually built it as a love story because the relationship at the heart of it is just so fascinating and chaotic and unique. So it's a sort of Big Short, Social Network-esque story told as a love story. Oh, and then you asked about my my partner. He actually, I guess, I've talked so much about the work, but to Karen's point, relationships do matter, because this actually, he's been a close friend of mine for about 15 years, and we partnered up because of that friendship. He was actually the head writer of The Office. And so in the American version of The Office, there were a couple head writers. He was like the second to last. And I've been writing kind of more dramatic stuff, and he obviously has a kind of comedic background. So we did like a dramedy out of WeWork. And yeah, that was just like a personal relationship where there's a Wondery podcast called WeCrashed that he found, and he was like, this is really fascinating. Actually, a producer brought it to his manager, who brought it to him, and that producer, Aaron Hart, is a Duke alum. So just to sort of bring it full circle. But anyway, this producer works at Wondery, brought this podcast to Lee's manager. Lee's manager brought it to his attention. He listened to it and flipped for it, asked me if I wanted to write it with him. We partnered up and made the show.
I wanted to ask a question about WeCrashed. If I'm correct, you're working as both a producer and a writer on the project. And so I was wondering if you've found that the needs of one position influence your work and the other, or if you completely kind of separate both jobs.
It's really it's a excellent question, because TV, and now like as more movie stars and movie directors move over to TV, you've now got like film talent working in television, but it's still based on the television model. And it's very different than film. In film, solitary screenwriters kind of labor on their own and write scripts, and that's it. It doesn't matter if you like, that's what you do your whole career from the beginning to the end. In TV, there's like this kind of ladder where you start off as a staff writer, and then you kind of work your way up, and you start gaining these management roles as you go. So usually by the time you run a show, you've been doing some of the managerial stuff already. I jumped right to showrunner because I created the show, but I had been an executive for so many years that I was able to draw on all of that. But it's really fascinating to me. They are two completely different skill sets. Like sometimes what makes an excellent writer is utterly unrelated to what makes an excellent executive producer showrunner. So it gets messy. Sometimes there's brilliant writers that are given the reins of a show and it's an utter debacle, and also like traditionally, showrunners were white men, and I am a white man, so that's still often the case. But like, there was a lot of bad behavior, right? Because people that were not good managers or good leaders and there was a whole bunch of issues, but these were people that never should have been in charge of a group of people or an organization. And I think that there's a real recalibration right now in Hollywood. Part of it is like diversity in writers' rooms. Part of it is diversity in show running. But also, I think people are trying to learn how to be better leaders and managers. And it's kind of happening in real time, that what used to fly doesn't fly anymore. So like there's kind of more conscious efforts to, anyway, I'm sorry, that's a very jumbled answer, but there's a lot of change right now, and those two things didn't often go together. And now there's mentorship programs and a lot of things to try to make sure that the people that ultimately get the reins are kind of fit to kind of be in charge.